Morning, good morning. Welcome to Wooden Spoons on CKUW 95.9 FM. You're listening to us broadcasting here from Winnipeg, Manitoba, heart of Turtle Island in Treaty 1 territory, and my name is Kristen Andrews, your co-host. And welcome. Every Friday morning, we have the chance to sit with community nutritionist Mary Jane Eason, and Wooden Spoons is the show that you'll be hearing from 8 a.m. till 9 a.m., bringing you up to Democracy Now! So each Friday, we do try to discuss topics of healthy living, environmental issues, what's going on in our community, and all kinds of other interests, all packed into the next 60 minutes. On Wooden Spoons, we recognize that all things are related, and it's with learning and awareness and just a dash of kindness that we connect the dots that make up our world. And it's during this time that we will try to speak to today's relevant issues, always try to have some time for a nutritious recipe, and we explored topics that you won't find on mainstream media. And this is what the power of community radio looks like. So very exciting to be able to do this. Thanks CKUW, and thanks to our technician Ugona. And my goodness, Mary Jane, what a week it's been. This particular week in May has marked Manitoba Day, the founding of the notoriety around which our province was found. Thanks, Louis Riel. We've had Census Day. We've all begun our census, and of course, it's less than 2 weeks till the annual Mary Jane's Cooking School Garden Party. These are all monumental things that have happened this week.
Thank you, Kristen. Yes, so this morning we have a very full morning, as we always have. I'm going to just give a bit of a rundown and hope I can cover the things I've put on the list here. I want to make a bit of a commentary on Assiniboine Park because it relates to other issues that we've talked about, and a commentary based on commentary from the public in the editorial page. Also, I'll be touching on the CBAN petition, why that is so important, and a related organization called PAN, which is Pesticide Action Network. We will talk about phytochemicals in vegetables and fruits, and focusing on how to cook with them for color, amongst other things, and health. And then we're going to have an interview with our guest today, who is Marie LeBlanc. And oh yes, as you say, we'll have a song, and she's provided us with a song, and then we will have a recipe after that, hopefully. Yes. So,
another jam-packed Friday mornings.
Yes,
folks,
I don't know.
You're just waking up and tuning in at home. We're currently sitting at about 10 degrees right now. It's just partially cloudy out there. There's a wee chance that we might get a drink of rain today, which could be incredible. We're headed to a high of 23, and a little bit of a heat wave coming at us over the next few days, climbing up on the temperatures, headed towards a high in the 30s of early next week. So a beautiful time to be prepping garden beds and to just be enjoying nature in mid-May. So there's our current temperature.
Okay. Yes, so getting back to our guest, the month of May is designated as Multiple Chemical Sensitivities Awareness Month, and very appropriately, we will be talking to someone with lived experience of an environmental illness. Marie LeBlanc had been our guest on May of 2019, along with Susan Malloy, who was living with multiple chemical sensitivities as well in Arizona. Marie experiences MCS for short, Electro-Magnetic Hypersensitivity and toxic mold exposure. Originally from northern Manitoba, Marie lived in Winnipeg before moving to Alberta. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in Human Geography and Sociology from the University of Manitoba. In Winnipeg, she participated in the Making Our Mark 2 printing mentorship program at Martha Street Studio, the Artist in Residency program at Art Beat Studio, and the Art Salon program at Arts Accessibility Network Manitoba, and that's AANM for short. Her story and artwork have been featured in interviews and articles in Western Canada, in Arizona, and in the UK. She has just completed a 2-year documentary project titled Overdressed that depicts her journey of living with multiple chemical sensitivities. Marie herself, Marie is a self-advocate who brings awareness of the reality of MCS and the struggles of those like herself who experience the experiences they have just to simply survive. And today we will be addressing the topics of MCS, the challenges faced by those having environmental illness, living in survival mode, and her own artistic accomplishments. So welcome to Wooden Spoons, Marie.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm just amazed at your survival skills and your endurance. And you have been exploring media work in Winnipeg by participating in programs at different well-known studios. I'm very familiar with Artbeat Studio, for instance. And I'm curious about when and how you came to develop these chemical sensitivities. How did they first present themselves, and how did you interpret that?
Well, in the beginning, I had no idea what I had. I was just going for a lot of surgeries. I was really sick. I was diagnosed with conditions like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, irritable bowel, interstitial cystitis, and the list just went on and on and on of different conditions. And I finally became diagnosed officially in like 2011-12.
So the diagnosis itself is, it's not an easily recognizable disease, and many doctors are not aware of the disease of this illness or even qualified to diagnose for MCS. And, you perhaps are left to self-diagnose in many cases. So how did you get to have a doctor or somebody that identified what you were suffering from?
Well, I was at the library one day, and I started reading about multiple chemical sensitivity. I'm like, well, this is me, oh my goodness. And then I presented it to my doctor. We all knew what I had, but I had to go to Nova Scotia to get assessed and diagnosed. And then I came back to Manitoba, and I still really couldn't get or afford the treatments that I needed. And then I moved to a place where there was a lot of mold, and I had mold exposure. So I then started looking up related to mold exposure, and basically the majority of my conditions were all related to MCS and mold exposure. And then I started going for like my HLA test, and I had the genotype, and I'm like, oh my goodness, but I couldn't get the treatment that I needed. So in the end, I ended up going to Alberta to see a doctor. I had, experienced things such as kidney failure, scurvy. At one point, my bladder was going to either have like a pacemaker attached somehow, I'm not sure, or be removed, which we were talking about. So the list just kept going on and on. Dementia, almost dementia-like in the mold. A certain kind of amnesia, but I forget what kind, which kind of goes with the topic. So the list just went on and on and on. And right now, so the prescription is basically living in my van because I can't be in normal housing.
So you just decided that you had to live away from the urban centers and go away in more isolated spaces in order to escape some of these symptoms.
Yeah, basically, like I have to even watch where I go because there's hydro lines, Wi-Fi, 5G, scent, smoke, like campfire smoke. So sometimes I'm doing a lot of moving in one day.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of the many doctors they see this as sort of a psychiatric. They see this disease as through the lens of psychiatry, and they don't. I think they first want to make sure that you are of sound mind. That they probably think that it's all in your imagination or it's a hypochondriac situation. Is that have you experienced that kind of reception?
Oh yes. Many of us experience that, and that's one of the first places besides various many other doctors trained in the different body organ systems. Like I would have so many doctor's appointments in a day, and I was sent to a psychiatrist who in the end realized that it was multiple chemical sensitivity and mold exposure, and he was the one who referred me to see the environmental doctor in Alberta. None of the doctors many of them are not even trained to diagnose or recognize multiple chemical sensitivity. So how can they diagnose us?
Exactly.
I wish they could put start training in the schools,
Yeah, well, I know one person who is leading an organization, and she has, MSc and MCS, and she because she was working for the federal government, they had to acknowledge her. She got a diagnosis, but it was a hard thing. She had to go to another province to get a diagnosis. But first, they vetted her through psychiatry to make sure she was, that she was didn't have a mental illness before they recognized that she had what she had. And then the government, because she was an employee of the government, they had to provide her with work accommodation. But a lot of people don't have that kind of situation where they can be accommodated.
No, and many times, and many times the people with MCS continue to be with, going to the psychiatry appointments, and it's just not recognized. And then they're stuck feeling healthy.
And then would you describe the triggers or the symptoms that you recognize as triggers, like the chemicals and mold and electromagnetic radiation and so on? How do you recognize it? How do you react to those symptoms? How do you find relief when you start getting them? Can you get away from them?
Sometimes it depends. You have to go far, far away. So like there's like perfume, for example, will then start acting up my fibromyalgia, my bladder, that type of amnesia. So I can carry on a conversation. You think I'm understanding, but later on I might not 100% remember. And then I'm trying to eventually put the bits and pieces together, and people say, well, you just finished telling me you understood. And I'm like, I guess I didn't. There's concentration, like in mold, kidney failure. And once again, the interstitial cystitis becomes worse. Like the Wi-Fi, concentration, I will be swelling, and I may talk really fast with any of these, like perfume for sure. I'll either be like slurring or just speeding away talking. Pesticides, the gas oven, that'll hurt my kidneys. Fires, building supplies, pain, memory, different parts of my body, just pain. And when I was in the mold, I just felt like ripping out some of my body parts because I just couldn't handle the pain. And my heart, I'll get heart issues. And I could be sent to so many different specialists.
Would you repeat that?
Oh, I could be sent to so many different specialists, but now that I know that it's my environment, I don't need to go to 3 or 4 specialists in a week, let alone a day, because before I was going to so many in a day, I couldn't even keep up, plus I was getting sick going to the environment. And so for relief, I kind of, I have to turn off my cell phone, go to a different place, put stuff in my bins if I go to a store. There's so many different things. It's really time-consuming.
Mm-hmm. You're listening to CKUW 95.9 FM, aired from the University of Winnipeg, and this is Wooden Spoons. I'm Mary Jane Eason with Kristen Andrews as co-host, and we're talking to Marie LeBlanc about multiple chemical sensitivities which she has been experiencing. And so these are very serious symptoms, and you mentioned Wi-Fi. And so I guess you have to be very careful where you live. And so tell me about how you find escape or some relief from all these influences that affect you so badly.
Okay. Well, I live a very nomadic life in my van, so I just go from place to place, which I chose basically out of desperation because I was living on people's couches. There were mold and living in not so safe places. So I find my relief, by going into different places in nature. There's challenges and good things, and the challenges are like the van breaks down constantly. I just need a new van or something reliable, not necessarily new. It's expensive sometimes to keep fixing the van. I end up trusting people that maybe I shouldn't. Get kicked off properties, or not kicked off, but it's hard to stay on a property for a long period of time and somebody just doesn't want you on there. I do a lot of bartering. The good stuff is, though, I don't have to ask the landlord to fix, whatever needs to be fixed within my housing. But a lot of times I can't afford it. But there is a lot of good. I can leave anytime I want if it's a bad environment.
Yes, so there, just speaking about the kinds of things that you're experiencing, is there a cautionary tale to be told when it comes to the occurrence of multiple chemical sensitivities?
Well, yeah, we live in a toxic world. As a dominant species, we continue seeing an increase in MCS if we don't begin correcting our current behavior. Like, we're like the proverbial canary in the coal mine.
And so actually, we can expect, if we do not take care of our environment, if we keep polluting our environment, we are going to see more and more and more cases of MCS. Mm-hmm. It'll become very common.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, because there's more and more people. Like, there's over 1 million people in Canada right now, but I noticed in one article that there was 12.8% of the population in the States. And that's like a lot of people.
It is very high, yes.
Yeah.
And then, of course, perhaps there are people just like that are on the way there that have a lot of problems, but they're not diagnosed with MCS, but they have a lot of problems that if the environmental situation was changed, it could be diet, it could be all the toxins that we aren't even aware of, that would restore their health. I think this is probably what's happening. We don't even know it is under the surface.
Yeah, and the stuff is good for us. Costs a lot of money.
It costs a lot of money to fix it?
Well, like stuff that's good for us, like organic food, it's not as expensive as it was, but it charges so much for what's really good for us.
Yes, that's very true. Yes, exactly. And you still have to be careful if you don't eat organic food. You still have to be reading those labels very carefully to see what kind of things are in the food, and try to eat whole foods. Really, there's a way of, if you just eat the whole foods, you're avoiding a lot of other problems that come with industrialized food. And and you have referred to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. He's a psychologist that made a big contribution to the field of psychology, and anybody that took any psychology would have been acquainted with his thinking. And he understands our needs as being depicted as a triangle, and with the base of the triangle representing the basic needs, and the highest tip of the triangle representing self-fulfillment needs. It's that kind of a hierarchy of needs. Do you want to comment on that and how that model can be applied in your own situation?
Okay. Well, access to safe housing, food, clothing, medical, public spaces is all a challenge. So I go to great lengths, to try and make this work for myself. So I live a life similar to that of quarantine. So I think about Maslow's theory of human motivation, like his hierarchy of needs implies that we must satisfy the needs of one stage before feeling motivated to rise to the next. So being in survival mode 24/7, like I say, I do a lot of things to try to get to those needs. and some of it takes a lot of careful planning. So I wear a blue dress that marks a special event of that. It's like a special occasion for each thing that I do throughout the day. So exhausted, I'm then challenged with finding a comfortable place to rest after all my events for the day. Then as I travel, my boots become worn, my dress is dirtier, and at some point I do experience self-actualization, very minute times.
That you feel that you have done something in the day that you're happy to have accomplished.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So most of your energy, is what you're saying, is being used in survival mode, like to find food and water, to be warm, to have a place to rest.
Yeah, and it's all a challenge. Like finding water is a really hard one, and then you got to haul it back, and you can't wash that many clothes with it. It's like being back in the olden days.
And you didn't grow up like that.
No.
You had to learn how do you find water?
I ask a lot of people. So sometimes there might be like a river or stream. There's a lot of spigots in different places depending where you go. Right now it's really a challenge. But when I was in southern states, it was much easier because there are a lot of nomads.
Is that right?
Yeah. I can't tell you how many people I run into that I've mentioned my situation, and they're like, well, that's me too. I didn't know there was a name to this.
Really? So this is a very, very hidden disease. This is, below the surface of our consciousness or of our awareness.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and so they're just going into a place where, like, let's say you needed medical attention, and you would you go to a doctor? Where would you go?
Well, I try not to as much as possible now, because when I go, they think it's in my head, because then I'm either talking fast or they think I'm drinking. I'm like, no, I'm just reacting to the cleaning chemicals, and they'll say there's no cleaning chemicals. We did it 2 days ago or whatever. I'm like, they're spraying a lot even more now during COVID. It's making it hard. And then I'll just get a misdiagnosis, or maybe I should said a different way. I would get a diagnosis that will actually get better if I leave the environment.
I knew a lady once, a friend of mine, and she would, when she'd go to, this is when Eaton's place was still there, and she would say, oh, they have sprayed for pesticides. She could pick up that vibration of the pesticides, so she knew, and she didn't like it at all. So some people are very sensitive to these things.
Oh yeah, that stuff just gets me.
So every day in your life is the day of spending it in survival mode, right? Most of the time. But you've also have you had an opportunity to make friends? I'm going through the hierarchy of needs here. Making friends, accomplishing things.
Yeah, I have had, so apparently I guess I've accomplished the housing in my van, but it still always breaks down. I have, met a lot of people on the Facebook groups. I've done a lot of things trying to create awareness, where I have, met a lot of people who actually will take the time to hear what it is that people with MCS need. And when I'm in nature, my thing, I guess, for if I hit self-actualization, is doing the photos. When I was dancing around, doing the photos in the dress in the art show, it felt great.
So you had your mind off of it. You had your mind off your symptoms.
Well, I was still sick as a dog, but it was like I just needed to do something else, just to do something else.
Yeah, I'm just curious about the fact that you talk about Facebook. So you have the technology. Does that ever affect you when you're using your computer or your cell phone, just like as you're doing now?
Yeah. So if I'm actually trying to learn or I can't explain. It's really hard to explain. It depends on the toxic load in the day. But if I'm trying to learn something, I can't. I can't. I'll be typing an email, and it's like I totally forgot what I was typing. I press send. Someone will be like, well, what did you send? It looks like I'm drunk, and I just didn't finish the email. It's really hard because it affects my thinking. So it's really hard, and sometimes I just have to put that phone down because the pain in my body, I just can't deal with it.
Mm-hmm. So maybe you could tell us about your 2-year photo documentation project titled Overdressed that was just debuted still is, I guess, from May the 1st to it's finished, May the 1st to the 12th. And it was funded by Arts Accessibility Network Manitoba. And, it maybe has been said that this documentary elucidates how the hierarchy of needs plays out in your life. Do you want to comment on this documentary?
Yes. Well, I first bought the dress because I wanted to show the basic needs of people, to have the dress while I'm performing my basic needs. And then I got into the art salon program through Arts and Accessibility Network, and Yvette, my mentor, Yvette Scenerini, mentioned Maslow's, hierarchy of needs. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, I knew about it, but I was thinking of that as I'm back in the day in a cave, but I can't have a fire, was how I was thinking. And I guess subconsciously, I guess I really was thinking of it because everything I was doing with the dress was based on the hierarchy of needs. So we started working towards that. And, I've received a grant from MAWA and Arts and Accessibility Network Manitoba. And it conveys basically everything I do as a person with MCS. It's like everything's a special event with the dress. It's a lot of things, like a lot of effort to do that laundry. But yeah, it really does show what my life is like in many people with multiple chemical sensitivity, and maybe many more yet to come.
Yes, that's true. And then just the thought of doing laundry, you have to do it by hand with the water that you've hauled or found someplace.
Yeah.
River water, maybe?
Well, so not river, but there's some streams, but a lot of times it's a spigot, or maybe somebody will give me some water. I remember one lady offered me, she saw me, I guess she felt really bad. She thought I didn't have any money. Well, I mean, she's pretty much probably right on that one. But she came over, she said, my husband asked me to come over and give you some money so you could go to a laundromat. And so I explained why I couldn't go. And she was just like, she could not believe it. But her husband had COPD, which is why they were down there. And I guess he had some challenges with sense too, just not as bad.
So as a person with MCS, are you able to receive mentorship or find a supportive community for yourself? That would be very important, wouldn't it?
Oh yes, I can't even say thanks enough to Arts and Accessibility Network of Manitoba. Janelle is always amazing, giving me ideas, and they've helped me so much, put this together. Yvette through the Art Salon program mentored me for a year, and I received a micro grant from MAWA and Arts and Accessibility Network. So all this helps, and Paul Turgeon, who did technical things in the background, helped. There's so many things that I really need the mentorship because there's a lot I cannot do, but I have the goal, I have the ideas. I need the funding. I have other projects. I just need the funding. I would like to do a movie, write a book. I just can't physically do it. I need the help.
Mm-hmm. And you are a person that, embraces self-actualization, and also you see yourself as an advocate, as a self-advocate to make people aware of what this disease is and how it can be something that will be, experienced by others as well. And so this is a service that you're doing. Do you want to just comment on that goal that you have?
Yes. Well, I embrace self-actualization. I'm not sure if I really get there that often. I guess I skip a few
You are already. Yeah, you are. You were a story that you're a survival story for sure. Few people could be doing what you're doing.
Yeah, it's been a challenge. I do a lot of work where I approach different government places because we need that checkbox. I'm not sure if I'm answering this correctly. We need that checkbox. Like I have approached Manitoba Health at one point and had several meetings. Paul Manley, with Janelle Shaw's help, we presented a petition to the House of Commons, which he tabled last year. And then when I saw the comments of the Minister of Health, I think it was mentioned it was a World Health Organization thing, so I wrote a letter to the World Health Organization. I haven't heard back. And then the Green Party of Alberta had we had a resolution. It didn't pass, but it was for like the access and basic needs. Like human rights, basically human rights for people with environmental sensitivities, and we wanted so the Green Party of Alberta official recognize and accept the Canadian Human Rights Commission policy on environmental sensitivities and the Ontario Human Rights Commission policy on ableism and discrimination based on disability, with the objective of bringing Albertans disabled by these physical conditions under the protection of the Alberta Human Rights Act. So that's going to be, it's made it to workshops. So in the fall, it's going to go, once again, hopefully it passes this time. Then I've had different things where I've had the bridge lit with the support of the Environmental Health Association of Alberta and at a high-level bridge in Alberta last year and this year. And there's other people too. So many of us trying to do advocacy, and we're just falling a lot of times on deaf ears. I've been very fortunate that I do have, that the Green Party of Alberta is, looking into this.
Mm-hmm. And this program that you're, this photo documentation project called Overdressed, maybe you could comment, how was it received by your audience, and why did you call it Overdressed? What's the significance there?
Okay, it was received, it was excellent. Someone sent me an email and advised I go apply to the Guggenheim, but I didn't understand the rules. There's once again not understanding the rules. It brought back terrible memories for some people. Some people shared their stories, and some of the normal folk, I say normal folk because I'm not sure what to say, the people who don't have MCS had no idea and kind of now understand. The significance is just that I needed to bring attention to the basic needs of people that aren't being met, and that we need to get past that level, the first level, so we can start going up the ladder. And the dress signifies that everything we do is like a special occasion. So like it takes a lot of effort to do the laundry. It takes a lot of effort to put on that dress, which maybe never will go on again. But it takes a lot of effort for someone to get ready for a special event and then go out. And then they're tired after. Well, I'm tired after I do my laundry by hand. Mm-hmm. So it represents the journey along the way.
Uh-huh. And it's interesting that people could relate to it, it has been educational for people that weren't aware of this kind of illness.
Yeah, there was so much shock. I apologize.
Yeah. So, what would you like to see happen in the future? What are your goals? I know you are living a solitary life, and you live in a van. You talk about a van that breaks down, and and yet you're doing your artwork. So your artistic abilities are being put to use. So, what do you see in the future? How do you see that?
Well, if we could visualize and manifest a better van, that would be awesome. A reliable one. I really hope that with the work that I'm doing, that, because at the present moment, when you go into, like, say, a medical facility or somewhere, it's like I have to talk under my breath or not even mention multiple chemical sensitivities. However, I do mention it, and then it makes it a challenge because there is a lot of awareness out there, so I shouldn't say there's not enough. It's not being accepted. It would be nice if it would be like a household word. So I'm trying to get that checkbox so that it would be people could get their disability a little easier. The doctors knew about it. We need to have accessibility for our basic needs, like housing. We need housing that's good for us, housing, and we can't access that. I have so many goals. There's so many to mention. Someday, to be self-sufficient would be nice. And someday I hope, to have a movie and a book. I just need the right people. There's so many things.
Well, you know what? You are getting there. Sure, you make the perfect icon or whatever you call it, the model. You're what is the poster girl for MCS? Yeah, so do you want to leave is there any message you would like to leave for our listeners this morning?
Well, I would like people to know that MCS is real. Right now, there's a lady on a hunger strike in Quebec, and she has MCS, and she has a hard time entering medical facilities at a hospital because it's scented. And another friend passed away recently, Maria Rizzo, and complications of, she visited her dad in a hospital was scented, so she died with complications. So I'm really hoping that people understand that it's real. It could happen to anyone. It could be from a large exposure or several small exposures. I'm really hoping that we can have that ICD code or diagnosis C code that would be able to help all of us. It can happen to anyone. We're living in a toxic world. You may have symptoms, know someone who does, and may think they're a hypochondriac, and they most likely probably aren't. They're experiencing this, but they don't have anyone to help them.
Yes, and ironically, most of these cases, as even with people that are quarantined because of COVID, their security and their health lies in nature. And if we don't take care of nature, we are going to lose everything. Nature is our salvation. And we need to really, really take care of the earth and respect it in the right way. My last little statement. But thank you so much, Marie, for joining us this morning. It's always been a pleasure talking to you, and I always think of you often and wonder what you're doing, and I know that you're under a guiding light. So keep up the wonderful work you're doing.
You too. Thank you so much. Thank you.